UFC 307, Alex Pereira defends the light heavyweight belt against Khalil Roundtree Jr. This is the Funkin' Flex MMA preview and prediction show. I will be giving you guys a breakdown and pick for every fight on this card. But first, if you don't mind, smash that like button, hit subscribe. I got a lot of fresh content coming to you, starting with these weekly prediction and breakdown videos on Wednesday nights, and Friday nights will be my betting show where I dive a little bit deeper into what my actual card's going to look like come Saturday. Keep in mind, these Wednesday picks that I give out may not actually have any value to them. So unless you're a degenerate that likes to put together 12 to 14 leg parlays every week, that Friday video is crucial to catch. No disrespect to my fellow degenerates, I just feel it's important that I say that so we can stop donating to these sports books. There's enough YouTubers on there that like to get you to donate to these sports books. Over here on Funkin' Flex MMA, we like to promote profitable gambling. So let's go ahead and get into it. Starting off with the first fight of the night, we have Court McGee versus Tim Means. Right off the bat, I can tell you this is one of those fights that anything could happen and I would not be surprised. Court McGee, even though he is on a 3-fight losing streak, actually managed to look decent against Alex Morono last time out. And now I don't know if that's credit to Court McGee or if that's just time and time again shown that Alex Morono struggles with these older gatekeepers and somehow can't even manage to squeak out a decision against an old Nico Price, who realistically was one fight away from getting cut in the UFC and still may be cut from the UFC, but that's beside the point. Court McGee showed in that fight to still have the same thing that got him to where he's at in his MMA career, and that's his grinding cardio that's tough to match when it gets late into fights. Now, unfortunately for Court McGee, his biggest weakness in MMA is his weak chin, which is absolutely one of the worst weaknesses to have in MMA, as you've seen throughout his UFC career. Him win one, win two, lose two. He just can't ever seem to get going on a consistent streak because whenever he fights some of these power punchers, it's a deadly matchup for him. Now the question is, does Tim Means still have the same power that got him his 20 knockouts out of his 50 pro career MMA fights? It is impressive, but I just don't see him being that one-strike puncher. He's a volume puncher, kind of lets the damage build up and then gets you with that one final blow. I think Court McGee, while he is chinny, he's more chinny to guys that are putting him away quickly, guys that are hitting him with one shot and sleeping him. When he's fighting against some of these more grindy type of fights, more these Alex Morono where they win off of volume and control time, he has a little bit more success. And now, Alex Morono, I definitely rate higher than Tim Means. And not to do MMA math, but he did end up subbing Tim Means within the last 2 years. Which is why I'm over here scratching my head. Like, why is Tim Means a 2-1 favorite? What is everyone seeing that I'm not seeing? I guess that being said, my first pick of the night is going to be Court McGee. I think that he will end up grinding this out. And I do see him winning a decision, a long-fought decision, hard-fought decision. He will eat some strikes, take some damage from Tim Means, but I don't think Tim Means quite still has enough to put him away. I think if anyone's getting a finish here, it's going to be Court McGee by sub. And now, if Court McGee goes out there and gets slept in the first or second round, I would not be surprised at all. Tim Means does deserve a little bit of respect on his name for his 20 knockouts, but at the end of the day, when you're talking a 40-year-old fighter, I do think that Court McGee, even though he is 39, is 40 versus 40 over here, pretty much. But yeah, I think Court McGee is the better 40-year-old. I think he's got the better rounded skill set, and because of that, I'm going Court McGee as my pick. Fight number 2, we have Carla Esparza versus Tisha Pennington. This is another tough one to break down because in the last 2 years, these girls have had a combined 1 fight. And that was Tisha Pennington earlier this year. She lost a split decision against Tabitha Ricci, which, to be fair, she did look good coming back after a 2-year layoff. That being said, these girls also have a combined 2 total finishes in the last 7 years. So I do believe this fight will be going the distance. And for me, I have to favor the better wrestler in this matchup, who is Carla Esparza. I do know there's a lot of talk about her just having a baby this year, which may be something to say. I don't know. I've never had a baby myself, but personally, I do believe that Carla Esparza would not be coming back into the ring after this time unless she felt healthy, unless she felt ready. And I do believe that even though I don't think that either one of them has a shot at getting a finish here, that Carla Esparza will get this done by decision. I think that she's going to control on top of Tisha Pennington. I think she's going to waste a lot of time. I do anticipate this being a pretty boring fight, which is not a very hot take for a women's MMA fight. But that being said, Carla Esparza has performed better against better competition. Tisha Pennington has had a good career. Both of these girls are veterans. I don't expect any rookie mistakes, but I do just think Carla Esparza is the better wrestler. I think she knows what she needs to do to get this done, and I'm predicting a split decision win, Carla Esparza. Moving into the third fight of the night, the final fight of the early prelims, we have Ryan Spann versus Ovince St. Preux. And to me, guys, this is going to be a hard one to break down. On paper, the obvious pick should be Ryan Spann. He's the 33-year-old fighter. He has the height advantage. They're relatively equal in reach, but he's an 8-year younger fighter. That being said, the last time he was a favorite against an older fighter was Anthony Smith. And although it was a split decision loss, it was a on paper close fight, Anthony Smith outstruck him by 30 significant strikes. Now, I get what you're thinking. Anthony Smith is a future Hall of Famer, but it's definitely not for his hands. He has a nasty ground game and the heart of a lion, which is going to put him in the Hall of Fame. I'm not no disrespect to Anthony Smith, but if you watch the last fight out against Roman Dolidze, which we'll get to later, you would see that Anthony Smith is an awful striker. So to lose to an old Anthony Smith and get outstruck by him definitely is a big red flag for me. The only problem is Ovince St. Preux has not had any strong performance in recent history either. It's kind of the theme amongst these early prelims is a lot of these older washed fighters this card. Not that I'm hating or saying that it's bad, but it's just kind of hard to read from a gambling perspective. It makes me want to pick the dog. However, I do think Ryan Spann should be able to get this fight in the win column. If he sticks to his ground game, he fights smart, he throws the amount of volume that he needs to throw. He can't let Ovince St. Preux come out there at 41 years old and outstrike him. It's not going to be a good look. It could be the end of Ryan Spann. I think back against the wall, Ryan Spann's going to come out here, have a strong performance. I do think that he's going to rely on the takedowns. But from a betting perspective, I think that it's dog or pass for me. I don't think that I'm going to lay the chalk at a 3-1 favorite on a Ryan Spann who's getting outstruck by Anthony Smith. But that's neither here or there. My pick is Ryan Spann. Whether or not I bet him, that's another question. Moving on to the fourth fight of the night, we have Austin Hubbard and Alex Hernandez kicking off the prelims here. And this one is actually a very interesting matchup for me. If you're asking me who I think the better fighter is, there's no question in my mind that it's a 32-year-old Alex Hernandez. Even though he has lost 4 out of his last 5, and on paper it looks like he has a worse record when you compare 14-8 to 17-7, but the reality of it is Alex Hernandez has been fighting the better competition for a longer period of time. Austin Hubbard, on the other hand, did get cut from the UFC back in 2021. He's on his second run in the UFC after winning a split decision versus Roosevelt Roberts in the semifinal of the Ultimate Fighter. He did lose the finale to Kurt Holobaugh. Not 100% sure why they decided to get this guy back into the UFC. To me, his skill set is not very strong at all. His biggest strength, however, is Alex Hernandez's biggest weakness, which is cardio. This fight is at elevation, and if there's any concern that I have for Alex Hernandez, it would be that he burns out early and that Austin Hubbard is just able to throw more volume. I don't think there's really any finishing potential unless Alex Hernandez just gets so gassed at elevation that he can't continue to fight. But that being said, Alex Hernandez is my pick. I gotta pick the better overall UFC fighter. And that being said, his one win in his last 5 fights, he's lost 4 of them, but the one win was at lightweight. Alex Hernandez has been fighting at featherweight and losing. If cardio's a problem, maybe these 10 extra pounds at lightweight might give him the advantage that he needs. I know he has the skill set advantage. So with that being said, we're going Alex Hernandez. Moving on to the next fight of the night, we have Cesar Almeida versus Ihor Potieria. For this one, I think that there's an elephant in the room that's staring at everyone right in the face, and that's Cesar Almeida by knockout. Cesar Almeida will be my official pick today, but that being said, I want to play a little bit of devil's advocate. Last time, he was the clear favorite against Roman Kopylov, who was actually a pretty favorable matchup for him. The striker versus striker. When you have Cesar Almeida, who comes from Glory Kickboxing, what you worry about him facing is someone with good takedowns. Now, Roman Kopylov has yet to show that. Before that fight against Cesar Almeida, he was able to continuously take him down, and at the end of the fight, it was the takedowns that actually got Kopylov the nod in that split decision. Now, to be fair, I do think Kopylov is a much better fighter than Ihor. I do have to say, I think Ihor has the better ground game. And I do have concerns, especially for a 4-1 favorite in a Cesar Almeida, how he's going to look when someone has given the rest of the division the key to beating him, which is to take him down to the ground. Now, that being said, I think Kopylov was able to use his striking, which is still very high-level striking, to keep himself in that fight. I'm not ready to say that Kopylov has this high-level ground game, but I am willing to say that Cesar Almeida is very weak when it comes to takedown defense and to getting back up when he's on his back. I will be picking Cesar Almeida to win this fight. However, I may sprinkle an Ihor Potieria sub and decision. I haven't fully decided. I will be playing Cesar Almeida by KO. I'll tell you that much. I do think that he's able to get it done here. I do just, have that thought in the back of my mind. What if this guy is 36 years old, just is never able to learn takedown defense to compete at this high of a level? And Ihor Potieria has some good competition face. He's got a 20-6 MMA record at 28 years old. He's 8 years younger. I mean, the longer I look at this fight, the more I want to bet on Ihor. But I will be having Cesar Almeida as a play here. I think they're trying to build him up. I think the UFC wants another Glory Kickboxer, exciting knockout artist, and I do believe they've given him a matchup to do that. So Cesar Almeida will be the pick. Moving on to the next one, we have Mariano Rodriguez versus Yasmin Lucindo. And for me, guys, as a fan, I am extremely excited to watch this one. In my opinion, it's not too often that we get to see women's MMA matchups that are that exciting outside of title fights. But to me, between this one and the two we have later, we're in for a treat, guys. Yasmin Lucindo has looked great very early on in her career. At 22 years old, she has amassed a 16-5 pro MMA record. Mariano Rodriguez is the veteran in this matchup, coming in at 17-4-2 and the plus 145 underdog. To me, this is the classic young up-and-coming star versus the seasoned veteran. And I do think they are giving the young up-and-coming star in Yasmin Lucindo a little bit too big of a bump up in her competition. Don't get me wrong. I would not be surprised at all if Yasmin Lucindo comes out here and looks better than we've ever seen her before. Whether she gets a finish or decision, I do think Yasmin is dangerous at all levels of this fight. I do just believe that Mariano Rodriguez has seen enough of similar tests to Yasmin Lucindo. I think that Jandiroba is a much better grappler, and Jandiroba, even though she did smother Mariano Rodriguez, when it was on the feet, you can always see the fight is much closer. She gives a lot of these grapplers problems, and I do think that Yasmin's cardio will be tested at the end of this. So that being said, I'm going Mariano Rodriguez. I would not be surprised if either one of these girls gets a finish, though. I would be a little bit more surprised if Yasmin Lucindo wins by decision. That's probably, to me, the least likely outcome, which is why, to me, this is such an intriguing matchup at the women's strawweight division. I think that we really are going to get a good fight here, guys. And I do think that the veteran in Mariana Rodriguez is going to get her hand raised at the end of this. So that's my pick. Mariana Rodriguez, lock in the dog. Moving on to the featured prelim, the final fight before the main card. To me, this fight is main card worthy. We have an awesome matchup between Stephen Wonderboy Thompson and Joaquin Buckley. Now, for me, this is one of my favorite fights on the card, but I might be a little bit biased as I am a fairly big Stephen Thompson fan. What drew me to Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is what drew a lot of people to Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, is that he's just such a nice and friendly guy, yet when he steps inside that octagon, he is a wicked, nasty striker. He's going against a tough matchup here in a younger Joaquin Buckley, who really is on a nice streak right now. I have to admit, I have not always been the biggest Joaquin Buckley fan, but there seems to be a very obvious point in his career. Right after he lost to Chris Curtis, he seemed to turn it on. And I know we talked about Andre Fialho earlier with the Tim Means knockout and how it doesn't mean much, but he really has put together 3 impressive wins after Andre Fialho. He whooped Alex Morono's ass in a decision. He knocked out a veteran in Vicente Luque in the second round. And then he also beat a very tough Nursultan Ruzaboev in what honestly was set up to be a losing fight for him, if you ask me. He took it on short notice, came in, and still, looked good, really dominated that fight. Now, where Stephen Wonderboy has been weak is honestly where Joaquin Buckley looked good in the Nursultan Ruzaboev fight, is he was able to get some late takedowns. 4 for 4 on takedowns, actually, and he amounted that to 5.5 minutes of control time over a 15-minute fight and someone's last name that ends in the EF in Nursultan Ruzaboev. Those guys are supposed to be wrestling savages, and Joaquin Buckley, who's normally a pressure striker, was able to come out there and put the pace on Ruzaboev and get the victory by unanimous decision. However, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is coming fresh off of a fight against Shavkat Rakhmonov, who many believe is going to be the champion, if not by the end of this year, at the very least by the end of next year. And I don't blame people for thinking that. I'm starting to think the same thing. But I will say, he did not look as dominant against Wonderboy Thompson as I thought he needed to look. He had trouble getting him to the ground, and I think more of that has to do with Stephen Thompson having a solid takedown defensive camp and less to do with Shavkat's offensive takedowns, which is what a lot of people are saying, reminiscing on that fight. Give me Stephen Wonderboy Thompson as my official pick for this fight. I think that the camp that he has put in between the Shavkat camp and this has been solely focused on the ground defense, the takedown defense, and I think that if he can keep this fight on the feet, he should be able to dance around the pressure that Joaquin Buckley will possess. I don't think at 41 Stephen Thompson has lost enough to write him off yet. Give me Stephen Thompson locked as a dog. Moving on to the first fight of the main card, we have Roman Dolidze versus Kevin Holland. Roman Dolidze taking this fight on slightly short notice. It was supposed to be a Kevin Holland versus Chris Curtis matchup, which to me is the more intriguing matchup. But nonetheless, we got to thank Roman Dolidze for stepping up to save this fight, because we still get Kevin Holland on this card, which no matter what people say about him, he's a very exciting fighter. He may not always have the highest IQ, but he does have a very good skill set in a lot of different areas. I don't think he's as weak on the ground as people think he is, and his striking when he's in rhythm is some of the best in the UFC. He hits hard, he throws good combinations, and he has those long, lanky arms with that 81-inch long reach. I do think that he's going to be a problem for Roman Dolidze here, who supposedly has this insane ground game that people keep talking about, but maybe I'm a noob. I just haven't seen it yet. For the record, I'm definitely not a noob. I've been watching UFC for longer than Roman Dolidze has been in the UFC, and in just my opinion, I think his ground game is insanely overrated. Now, the one thing that he does have here is a big weight advantage, or at least a decent weight advantage. Well, Kevin Holland is no stranger to fighting at middleweight. Roman Dolidze is used to fighting at 205, and he has fought at middleweight before, so this weight cut isn't that big of a deal for him. However, he did look absolutely atrocious. Even though he got the dub against Anthony Smith, I still take some points away for him for that. Now, call me crazy, but I think Kevin Holland should be a much bigger than a minus 170 favorite. I think that it should be closer if it was a Chris Curtis matchup, but against Roman Dolidze, I think that he's going to get the striking match he wants. He showed good resistance against Khamzat, and before I get fried in the comments about that, Khamzat really had to work to get that takedown. Even though he got it in the first round and got the submission pretty quickly after he got it, when he fought Kevin Holland, he really had to work to get that. And that fight was literally in 24 hours notice. In a camp where he can prepare for these takedowns, I think a 31-year-old Kevin Holland, who's coming off of a frustrating loss to Michael Venom Page, where he was just never able to get his hands going against a difficult puzzle to figure out, I don't think Roman Dolidze is going to be that same puzzle, and I will 1,000% be laying the minus 170 odds on a much better fighter in Kevin Holland. Moving on, the second fight of the main card, we have a matchup between Ketlen Vieira and Kayla Harrison. And while the degenerate in me wants to bet on the massive underdog in Ketlen Vieira, who has more UFC experience, I'm just not that stupid. This is one of those situations where you don't overthink. Kayla Harrison has the muscle tone of a lightweight, if not a welterweight. She's walking around looking 155, 170, but somehow she cuts down to 135, and she 1,000% becomes every woman she fights daddy. I'm not going to waste your time too much on this one because, like I said, I really don't want you to overthink it here. Kayla Harrison will dominate Ketlen Vieira. I predict by knockout. I think it will be early on in the fight. I think she gets on the mic and she calls for whoever wins the title fight later that night. I don't have any doubt in my mind that she would dominate Raquel Pennington or Juliana Pena, but that's neither here nor there. She's matched up against Ketlen Vieira, and for me, it's an easy pick. Don't overthink it. Kayla Harrison, I'm leaning knockout, but I almost guarantee it'll be inside the distance. I don't think Ketlen Vieira has what it takes, so we're locking Kayla Harrison. Moving on to the featured fight of the main card, we have Jose Aldo versus Mario Batista. Mario Batista coming in on a 6-fight win streak, while Jose Aldo's coming in on only a 1-fight win streak. However, he did have those 2 years off after fighting the current champion in Merab Dvalishvili. I think he actually looked good in those fights. Before the 2-year layoff, I think that he looked good in stuffing Merab's takedowns. Merab went 0 for 16 on takedowns against Jose Aldo. And I get coming back and winning a unanimous decision against someone like Jonathan Martinez isn't necessarily the best impression to leave on your last fight, especially when you're a veteran GOAT like Jose Aldo is. I do have to say, after a 2-year break, he did not have any ring rust. He dominated that fight the whole time, and just because he didn't get a finish doesn't take away anything from that performance in my eyes. Now, Mario Batista, on the other hand, a decision against Damon Blackshear and Ricky Simone, when you're active and you're going, you're coming off of 3 submission wins in a row, with like he had before those 2 last fights, I was expecting to see a little more out of him. To be honest, I think he struggled a little more with Damon Blackshear than I was comfortable with, and Ricky Simone was in that fight the whole time too. So when you're talking about two names like Damon Blackshear and Ricky Simone. Again, I'm getting caught playing MMA math, but I just don't think they have the same caliber of skills as a Jose Aldo does. And I think Aldo's coming into this fight extremely slept on. For a plus 120 dog, I'm not even going to waste any more time on this breakdown. I think you're silly not to bet on Jose Aldo. I think Mario Batista is getting a lot of his leverage on the odds because of his age and because of his win streak. I don't think that anyone he's fought compares to the resume of a Jose Aldo, who's 32-8, fighting the best fighters in the world. I do think this is the end of the road for Mario Batista's win streak. I don't necessarily think it'll be by finish. I think it will be a gritty decision, but I think Jose Aldo 30-27's him. Honestly, I'll be surprised if this fight's close. I think if I were making the odds here, I think Jose Aldo should be a 2-1 favorite, and it's closer to being flip-flopped. So even though my screen says plus 120 odds, we're seeing a lot of money come in on Mario Batista for some reason. I'm going to pick Jose Aldo despite the odds. I don't want to disrespect Mario Batista at all, but I really just feel like this is a position where Jose Aldo's set up to have a dominant performance. I think that he's set up to get on the mic and call someone out in the division. He does have the resume to do that, and I wouldn't be surprised if someone like Sean O'Malley or Corey Sandhagen gets called out after he wins this fight in dominant fashion. So give me Jose Aldo as the pick. Moving on to the co-main event, we have an awesome matchup between Raquel Pennington and Juliana Pena. Juliana Pena coming back after the 2-year layoff after her loss against Amanda Nunes. In my opinion, guys, I think Juliana Pena's career is extremely overrated. The first fight against Amanda Nunes is the only reason that anyone rates her career high at all. I honestly here I'm going to keep this one short and sweet. I don't think she stands a chance against Raquel Pennington. I think Raquel Pennington may be better everywhere. The argument may be that Juliana Pena has a little bit more technical striking, but I just have a hard time believing that after 2 years off, she's going to come back and look good against the current champion. Just because she caught Amanda Nunes, that's the only reason that this fight's not a 3-1 or 4-1 favorite. Raquel Pennington really has improved, and I think that she is way better than enough to get this job done against a rusty Juliana Pena. Give me Raquel Pennington. I wouldn't be surprised in a 5-round fight. Give me Raquel Pennington inside the distance. I could see a sub. I could see a ground and pound. I know we don't see that too often out of Raquel, but I really do believe in her in this matchup. I think that she's going to get on the mic and welcome Kayla Harrison. I do believe that her dominance in this performance against Juliana Pena will have a lot of people fooled in the next money line against Kayla Harrison. And not to start talking about future matchups that aren't even scheduled yet. We have a lot that needs to happen. I do think that that Kayla Harrison is going to be the champion. I really strongly believe that. I don't think either one of these girls can hold her jockstrap, for lack of a better expression. But we'll see what happens for this night. Raquel Pennington, give me and still. That brings us to the main event of the evening, UFC 307's headline, Alex Pereira versus Khalil Roundtree. And guys, I think no matter how this fight ends, it ends in fireworks. Finally, after a UFC 306 Noche Sphere card that was hyped up for months and months and months and actually was overshadowed by a couple of poor co-main and main events, the rest of the card was actually decent. But finally, we have a headline worthy, a GOAT in the making in Alex Pereira. And for me, I don't want to leave you guys in suspense. I think this is an easy win for Alex Pereira. Him joining forces with Glover was honestly one of the highest IQ moves that we've seen in MMA. Talk about a glory kickboxer with phenomenal striking, some of the best in the world, comes into the UFC with a glaring weakness of takedown defense and ground game. He had never been exposed to that side of fighting before, but then he meets a Glover Teixeira, and he has gradually improved. And over the last few fights, even though we haven't seen it really tested, I think that he has significantly improved in that area. And I would not be surprised if he shows that in this fight. Khalil Roundtree Jr. is a phenomenal Muay Thai fighter, and he's coming in on a little streak of his own. But the only problem is the guys that he is fighting are nowhere near the level of striker that Alex Pereira is. Not only that, where we have seen Alex Pereira improve on the ground, we have yet to see that from Khalil Roundtree. And to me, I think that is the obvious path to victory. If you're game planning as a coach, Glover planning this for Alex, I think that we may see him use his offensive wrestling and grappling for the first time ever. I know that his defense has improved, but how do you improve your defense if you're not improving your offense as well? I know it's a bold pick. Honestly, I have to shout out Matty Betts for giving me the idea on this one. I love Alex Pereira by sub here, and I really do believe that he can get it done, and that if he's smart, he will get it done, and I wouldn't be surprised if it happens in the first 2 rounds. I think no matter how it ends, the fight ends early. I really don't see this going over. I think that's going to be the way that I look to bet this on any parlays that I attach to this fight, because I promise you I will have enough individual units deployed on Alex Pereira inside the distance with the sprinkle on round 1, round 2, round 3 sub. I really would not be surprised if that happens, and you're getting it at like 17 to 18 to 1 odds. So even though this isn't my betting show, that's a little insight on what we're going to be talking about Friday for this main event. I would love to see Pereira go out there and get the sub. Either way, I'm not going to overcomplicate this one either. Alex Pereira is the pick. Give me Pereira. I hope he goes back down and he fights a Dricus du Plessis to get that 185 belt back, and then comes back up, and we'll see if he decides to go heavyweight or not. I'm not quite sure he has the size for that, but one thing's for sure is I'll never doubt Pereira. That's the end of this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching, making it to the end. Like I said, I really do believe we have a great matchup, several great matchups on this card, in fact. I'm excited for it. UFC 307. Thanks for being a part of the first video of my channel, guys. I really hope you liked it. If you don't mind, hit that like button, hit subscribe. Like I said, we got more content coming to you soon, and I could not be more excited about it. As always, much love. Can't wait to see you on the next one.